One of the biggest tourist attractions in Palm Springs is the aerial tramway, which is sort of a gondola thing that'll take you to the top of the mountains and this spectacular view of the Coachella Valley. It's a fairly desolate road up there. I mean, there's not that much traffic, which is why it was really shocking when we found out in 1991 that there was a bus accident that killed 7 people on that desolate road. Troy and I both became very curious about it, and we did a deep dive, and this is the result of that. And also, Troy got a camera recently, a new camera, which is going to showcase some of the incredible landscape in the desert. So join us for a trip and the story of the 1991 Girl Scout bus accident that killed 7 women. And also, huge thanks to our friend JD, who took us up there and dropped us off at the location because security's pretty tight up there. There's no place to pull over. So JD took us up there and dropped us off and came back about a half hour later. So major nods to JD for helping us out. We are heading up the road to the Palm Springs aerial tramway, Mount San Jacinto State Park entrance. And we're visiting the location of where the crash happened on July 31st, 1991. It's a beautiful, beautiful road. Last time we were up there about a year ago, I think, up to the with my brother and sister-in-law, my sister and brother-in-law. We were heading up here, and I'm not gonna lie, going up that thing was terrifying. Going to the top of the mountain. I did not enjoy the trip, but it was fun to be up there. But just the process was not good for me. Plus, there are several people hiking up here or walking up and down. Oh, right after that curve, so it didn't make the whole curve.
Right, so it's down in there.
Right in there. Okay.
Right down in
All right. Well, so we're going to go back to the top and do the route that the bus took from up here. I forget how many. Well, I'm going to go into the details. How many buses there were, but I guess it was about 100 Girl Scouts from all around the world coming in. They called it California Dreamin', and they were doing all sorts of events around California. And I think there were 47 on this particular bus, along with the driver. So when we get to the top and we start coming back down again, you'll see the exact view they had. When we went up there the last time, a year ago or so, we ate at the restaurant up there, and I will tell you, it was some of the worst food and the worst service we've ever had. And we didn't, we were treated, but I remember looking at the menu, going, it's kind of, it's not cheap to eat here, but man, the service was awful. I remember the cutlery, the glasses were dirty. I think we wanted ketchup or something, and they gave us packets, and it was not good. So that was a shock, because up there is probably one of the most beautiful views in the area. And apparently the road's been regraded a few times, and there are these curb things which are supposed to probably protect the people on that side of the road, or vehicles from going off that side of the road. Maybe we should turn off the air conditioner. Oh, this is where when we have bad weather and stuff, this is where they close it off completely when the tram's closed. And the tram closes fairly often. I don't know if that was true, but this year it was something like 18 people were stuck up there overnight or something.
The Palm Springs aerial tramway is back up and running after hundreds of people got stranded at the top. We're told the tramway malfunctioned around 8 on Friday night. They started bringing people down slowly after midnight.
On the way down, they still had equipment issues where the car would stop and it would slow down significantly, and it would take about, I want to say it took about 25-30 minutes to get back down.
We're at the top of the road at the guard shack, so we're going to make a U-turn up here, and after we turn, we will be on the exact path of the bus. All right. So this is the pathway that the bus took. And the bus driver was 23 years old, which surprises me, but it shouldn't. And they say that he wasn't trained properly for mountainous terrain. So at this point, he probably just wasn't in low gear, or, because you could see we're downhill, and you could see we could very easily, if we even put the car in neutral, we'd be flying down here. And apparently it was obvious that they were going too fast to the people on the bus, because I believe one of the chaperones yelled saying slow down, and he said that he can't, and they said hit the emergency brake, and he said the brakes aren't working. And I think there was a warning given to the girls on the bus to brace yourself. They couldn't have had too much of a warning when they were doing this. That had to have been terrifying, because when they noticed that the brakes were out, they traveled for another mile, and that mile would have probably felt like 10 miles. And they were following other buses, and or like 3 or 4 vehicles or something, and the bus driver couldn't stop, so he went into the opposite lane to pass them by, because otherwise he would have hit them. And it's like, what would you do in a situation like that? Speaking of low gear. And they said, I think they were going up to 64 miles an hour. They were going down this hill. And going that fast, that had to be an element of control that the bus driver did have. There had to be an element of skill in this, because that would be hard to control a vehicle that big.
So we're going to be approaching it.
Okay. Is this...
Yeah.
This is it?
This is like the curve. This is where they went.
Straight on.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. They've got that blockade over there now.
You don't want cars to come around that corner.
No, I'm watching. I'm watching. I can punch it. Okay. And we'll come back to have a proper look. So the bus is coming towards us from the top of the mountain because the girls were taking the tram, which is like a gondola sort of from down here all the way up to the top of the mountain. And the bus is coming in the direction that this car is now, going 64 miles an hour, and didn't make this last turn. The bus driver actually, there could have been other areas where the bus driver went off the road. But so he made it down this far, and there was like a 5-car caravan. I cannot figure out the details of that really, if there were other buses or not. But the bus driver was, you know, yelling, I can't do the brakes. The people were yelling for him to slow down, and he couldn't. He said the brakes are out, and he tried using the emergency brakes. Girl Scouts remember that happening. So he made it all down those twisting turns that we just did and made it to this curve coming down. If he'd have been able to get control of it, it was just really a straight shot all the way down there, but he didn't make it. Launched into this area and landed just to the right of that big boulder. Because that big boulder shows up in some of the photographs. So does this little cluster, These show up in the photographs of the bus as well. So it landed right about there. And a lot of the photographs are probably taken from that ridge right over there. Probably press were allowed to get to that point. So the triage center was probably just down the road a little bit, but that's where they came to land. And most of the injuries came from the front of the bus, where the impact was. The people who died, and most of the injuries, they say out of all the buses, only 3 of the windows weren't broken. A lot of the injuries were from broken glass, cuts, and blunt force trauma otherwise. But so it landed right about down in there. So this program that the Girl Scouts were in was it was called California Dreaming, and 104 girls, 23 adults from 20 states in Canada and Finland were on this trip, and they were all taking the trip up the aerial tramway, and it's about 8,500 feet up to the top of Mount San Jacinto, which is over there. As far as there was a caravan of, they say, 5 vehicles. I haven't quite figured that out, but the bus was the last of the 5 vehicles. And as he was going down the hill, down in this direction, you could see it's a two-way road, and he was going so fast he was actually passing. He was able to pass those other ones, honking his horn and waving to them. And there was a bus in front of him, or a vehicle in front of him, that she said she lost sight of him in the rearview mirror and caught sight of him just after this last curve, just as he was going off the road. This road's less than 4 miles long, but it drops 2,200 feet, so it's pretty steep going downhill. And some of the girls remember him, you know, flailing, trying to get hold of the emergency brake, and at the end of it, all he said was, "Brace yourself." He screamed for everyone to brace themselves. The speed limit down this road is 30 miles an hour, but he was going 64 down that curve. Oops. And the bus was it basically was sitting there in 2 parts, 50-yard radius of wreckage, and they say the axle is 25 yards away. Now, the first people on the scene were British tourists who just happened to be driving through. And they described, you know, a lot of the girls who weren't seriously injured, just in their uniforms, just sort of wandering around in a daze, which would have been a hell of a thing to see, the whole thing. They say that at one point when the rescue, I mean, imagine this terrain. And there are snakes everywhere in this. It took place in July. So it was part of the hottest time of the year. So the snakes were probably That's why we're not going down there. There's no way we're going down there. We thought about looking to see if there's still records of the bus, but it's just not worth it. It's just too dangerous. But so many people came out to help. I mean, doctors and nurses from 20 miles away were coming in to help. And most of the girls were, say blunt force injuries or cut glass. And Sonny Bono, who was the mayor at the time, was one of the first people that came up to help too. And he was legit coming up here to help. It wasn't a photo op for him, although he showed up in several photos. But he was, he was carrying stretchers over to the helicopters. And I read one really terrible account that they wouldn't let one of the helicopters return after dropping off 3 girls because they weren't licensed as an ambulance, which is just that BS, that red tape BS that they're more afraid of lawsuits than saving lives. It's so sad. But people towards the front of the bus were the people who suffered the most injuries. And they were taken to neighborhood, there's 3 hospitals. There's Eisenhower, which is the one that's over there in the distance. There is the one in Rancho Mirage, and that's Desert Memorial. Eisenhower's Rancho Mirage, and there's another one, I think, in Indio called JFK Hospital, and that's where they took all the victims. It took them about 3 weeks to get the survivors well enough that all of them had left the area and returned to their homes. But they say the driver did a lot to save people. He could have gone off the road in several other places, and he didn't. Now, 45 rooms of the Radisson Palm Springs were given to the group members who were able to get down to, they were well enough to leave the hospital to be treated and get around on their own. So the Radisson donated 43 rooms for the girls after the accident. They were heading back to their home base of Pomona at that point. And as I mentioned, the girls were 104 girls from all over America and Finland and Canada, the part of this program called California Dreamin'. They were touring around California. Now, ultimately, the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, concluded that a, quote, loss of speed control while descending Tramway Road because of the bus driver's improper driving techniques for mountainous terrain. So he was completely qualified to operate that bus and had been operating it for a long time. They just weren't trained for a terrain like this, for that steep 2,200 foot deep road. And they also blame buses. They said that the bus had out-of-adjustment brakes. Now, the bus company was happy to provide all the maintenance record, and I could tell you from personal experience that these buses, it was only 2 years old, and I think it was bus number 369, and the bus was inspected daily by the driver, who's trained to do that, and every 30 days by a certified mechanic. And that bus driver the bus itself was reported that it had weird brakes, like something was wrong with it. But the bus company, had all the records, the maintenance records, and turned them over happily. That bus was maintained, and those issues were addressed immediately before the bus was put back on the road. But still, I'll tell you that even if you do that sort of thing, it's not impossible to have an accident or something like that happen. I've told you in other stories that we had a vehicle that was only a couple of years old. We had inspected them daily, every 30 days by a certified mechanic. And then one day it caught on fire on Cielo Drive on the 50th anniversary of Helter Skelter. So there's no telling what will happen. There's no telling. But they say that contributing factors out of adjustment brakes, which had not been detected in the Mayflower contract services, maintenance reporting, and inspection procedures. These points also involve a driver's duty of care. In California, a carrier of persons for reward, meaning just being compensated, must use the utmost care and diligence for the safe carriage, must provide everything necessary for that purpose, and must exercise to that end a reasonable degree of skill. And one of them, they say, is following distance, which it sounds like they did, but the bus was out of control. And non-commercial motorists must maintain a 2-second following distance, but for large commercial vehicles, the usual standard is 4 seconds. I can't see how that would have been an issue because the bus driver right in front of him didn't see him for the longest time. So it had to be more than 4 seconds, unless they're talking about 4 seconds from the actual point where the car went off the road to the curve. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Commercial drivers must keep passengers safe while they are on board. This responsibility begins immediately prior to pickup and does not end until after drop-off. And on they at Desert Memorial Hospital, they had put up a tribute, sort of a plaque within it in a little courtyard for dedicated to the 7 victims and everyone else that was injured or affected by the accident. And what would it have been, 2025, I guess, they had another ceremony. Some of the victims' families and some of the victims returned that were in the bus and on that trip, and dedicated a very nice plaque in the center of that hospital. And we went to see it, and nobody knew what it was. I mean, all the security were like, I don't know. I had one picture of it, and they finally let us go to one place and found it there. So we did find that dedication plaque, but there is where the bus landed, and all the debris was scattered all around, 50 yards in every direction. So this is where it happened. This is July 31st, 1991, where 59 or 60 or 61, that number, it changes from report to report. Girls and their chaperones and the bus driver all came down that road that we saw and actually landed down there. 7 of them didn't get out. Some of them were taken to the hospital and died there, but 7 girls lost their lives because of this accident. 7 women, young women, and it's tragic. And it's sad too, because not a lot of people know this story. So I'm hoping that the story gets repeated, because it's a tragedy. It's fascinating, no doubt about it, because it's so horrific, but it's a real tragedy that people lost their lives. And probably, they say that now bus drivers are brought up here to train on empty buses to learn how to do this terrain. Maybe they put sandbags in it or something like they do on roller coasters every day. They're supposed to run the roller coasters with proper weight in the seats. So maybe that's what they do. But I've heard that school buses or bus drivers are trained on this road. So I don't think the guy was at fault necessarily. He wasn't trained, but everyone thought he was, and he probably thought he was, but he wasn't equipped to deal with a road this steep, and probably with a load that heavy of all those people. But that bus fit 70 people, 3 per seat, no seat belts. And I found really interesting, because they say that well, when I read about the seatbelt requirement, they're saying that they don't require it because kids need to get off those buses if something horrible happens. They need to get off. And it's also one of the excuses. They said it was too expensive. So, because we were required to have seatbelts on our buses, although they only sat 15 people. But we were required to have seatbelts, but they weren't required to wear them. And all of our buses had like escape hatches too. You could hit something and the windows would release. And I don't know if the school bus did that. Maybe they just thought they could push out a window and get out that way. Maybe that's how some of them got out. So there were all the windows were broken except for 3 on the entire bus. So the Girl Scout tragedy in 1991 occurred right here. And rest in peace, those 7 victims. Now we're going to go and see the memorial at the hospital.
So much emphasis is given to the people who died in this crash, but there are so many other people who were affected physically and emotionally by the fallout of this crash. The other women and girls that were involved in the accident, the first responders, the relatives and friends of the students, of the scouts, and the driver. It's so important to not forget that fact.